Right, this is it. It's time to brew up the most fearsome all grain recipe kit in the galaxy, the biggest beer that I will ever have brewed myself personally. It's the Emperor's Brewery Bounty Hunter Imperial Porter kit from Brew. Let's get into it. Right, in this video, I'm going to be taking you through the brewing process for this beer, which is going to be complex and take quite a bit of time. So I thought I'd dedicate a separate video to that before we get on to the tasting of the final product and all the rest of it, which will be quite a bit later down the line to allow for proper conditioning and aging, etc., etc. But before I get into the brewing process, I just wanted to address one thing quickly. There was quite a few eyebrows raised, shall we say, on the previous video regarding the price point, which is to be expected because, as I said, I think it's probably the most expensive kit that you can purchase at the moment in the UK. And some people questioned whether or not it was, good value for money or whether the ingredients included justified the price. So I thought I'd investigate that myself a little bit and basically went onto the Brew website and had a look at what it would cost to price up all of the ingredients individually. And it came out quite a bit in excess of the total price that they're selling the kit for, first of all. So that seemed like a decent deal to me. You could obviously shop around and purchase all of those individual bits in bulk and maybe get them cheaper from other suppliers. But if you're doing that, you've got to factor in additional postage costs potentially and the hassle of actually having to get that all together. And before we even think about all of that stuff, let's bear in mind that you're also paying for the recipe and the input from Damien from Emperor's Brewery himself, which is what really makes this kit what it is. So plus all of the effort to actually weigh it out and put it all together so it's ready to go, which for a beer of this complexity, I think does actually make a big difference. So to my mind, it does represent good value, but it's obviously just at the extreme end of the market as far as pricing goes. So whether or not you see it as a reasonable price for you personally to pay for a kit, that's up to the individual. And I'm not going to obviously make any claims on that front. So yeah, that's out the way. Let's get into the brewing itself. Right, let's start off with the mashing process, which is actually already taking place behind the camera now. As I mentioned in the previous video, this kit has been designed with all-in-one kind of 30-litre system users in mind, like Grainfather G30s and similar setups to that. As such, in order to achieve the mash volume that is required, the instructions tell you how to do a reiterated mash, which is where you portion the mash into two and then you basically mash the first half, drain off all of the work from that, and then mash the second half with the work from the previous batch. I'm not going to be doing that because I've got a 50-litre mash tun, so I can accommodate the full volume of that into that mash tun and do it that way. The other part of the mashing process that is in the instructions is a step mash. So I'm still going to be doing the step mash part, but because I haven't got a directly heated mash tun, I'm going to have to approach that slightly differently. Now, I have recently installed a Herms coil in the HLT and I've been experimenting with that a little bit, but I'm not confident that that's going to be able to raise the mash temperature quickly and evenly with such a large volume of grain. And yeah, basically I think it's just going to take quite a long time to do it that way. So what I'm doing is slightly different. I'm doing several infusions for the step mash. So what that means is starting off with a quite thick mash initially. So I'm mashing in at like 1.5 litres per kilogram. I think that's right. And that's going to give you a very thick mash, which I've just discovered when I was trying to mash in. It was a pretty hard work doing that. And then we can add what would have been the sparge water gradually or in portions to raise the temperature up. So for this brew, the first temperature step is going to be 43 degrees C, or as close as I can get to that. The next one is going to be 52 degrees C, and then we are up to this usual temperature range that you would use for a single infusion mass, which is 67 at the end. Now, why would you want to be doing those? For this type of beer, I think probably one of the main reasons that Damien would be employing this process is to basically aid with increasing the yield and making sure that you get maximum value out of it, because obviously it's going to be a very high gravity beer, and that would have a tendency for resulting in pretty low efficiencies and things like that if you're just doing a standard mash. So the first temperature range, I had to do a little bit of research for this myself, hence the tablet. The first temperature range, or the target of 43 degrees, is in a range for something called beta glucanase rest. So this is to break down kind of gumminess within the grains, particularly where you've got unmalted grains. Like this kit has got some flaked torrefied oats in it, so this is going to help to stop that being quite so sticky or gummy in the mash, and again hopefully help to aid conversion and efficiency by allowing the wort to flow more freely through the mash. And I'm guessing that's probably the main reason you do it, as opposed to for some beers like wheat beers, some people call that a ferulic acid rest, and that can help to increase cloviness, which is not something that you would be aiming for with this beer, I don't think. So that's the first one. Then the second rest is basically another form of protein rest. So that is your protease rest, and this is going to be targeting the protein molecules, and breaking those down. That's going to help to aid head retention, apparently, and as before, is going to help with a better yield where you've got lots of adjuncts in your mash. So yeah, I think these are, in this type of beer, mainly being used to just make sure you get maximum value out of the grist. The last step is at 67 degrees, which is in the alpha amylase enzyme range for what you would use with typical infusion mashing. Obviously, that is where we're going to get the actual conversion of the starch into sugars and hopefully give us the final wort at the end, rich in sugars, ready to go off and ferment in the beer. So we're doing 20 minutes at each of the two protein rests at the beginning, and we're starting off, as I said, with a thicker mash initially. I've then added 5 litres of boiling water, or as close to boiling water as we can get. That will raise it up to around about 53 degrees, hopefully. And then once the 20 minutes at that temperature is done, we're going to add pretty much all of the remaining water. So with these kinds of beers, you quite often end up without any liquid left over to actually do a proper sparge with. But I'm going to be recirculating the mash to hopefully get around any issues with that. And yeah, all the water is going to go in. That's should bring us up into the 60s temperature wise, but I don't think it's going to get us all the way, not according to the calculator anyway, not going to get us all the way up to 67. So I am probably going to have to use the Herms coil for a bit at the end to just get that temperature up to 67. So fingers crossed, let's see how it goes. Right, so the first couple of rest temperatures there went quite well. The infusions worked to get them pretty much where I needed them to be temperature wise. They don't need to be exactly on temperature for like protein rest and so on, as long as you're in the right sort of range. The final temperature rest though, we were a bit out there on the low side, because basically I forgot to kind of top up the HLT as I was going along. So when I added all of the remaining liquor out that into the mash, I then didn't have any water in there for the Herms coil, to heat the Herms coil, and then I had to top that up. Obviously that was cold water, that took ages to heat up, and I was then kind of panic microwaving jugs of wort to try and bring the temperature up. That didn't really do much. So basically I've accidentally added an extra step into the mash, so it was at about 63 and a half degrees C for probably about half an hour before I could then get it up to 67. So I'm going to extend the mash a little bit, because obviously if I was doing the reiterated mashing, then it would have been spending longer in the mash, because it would be 2 times 40 minutes. And I think with the additional sort of sparging there, I want to make sure that I'm giving it longer in the mash tun so that I can get maximum efficiency out of that. So yeah, I'm going to leave it for probably an hour and a half, I think, and then we'll drain it through. So my woes with the mash continued a little bit when we got to the draining stage. It didn't really want to drain through particularly easily, so it was a bit sticky. I wasn't using the mash bag today because it was such a big grist, and I thought that would be difficult to sort of lift in and out with that anyway. Maybe that would have helped. Other than that, I don't know, I was stirring the mash quite a lot throughout, so perhaps I ended up causing it to compact a little bit too much or something, I don't know. But anyway, it was a pain to get it drained through. But on the plus side, we did end up with pretty much bang on the numbers for the final gravity. When we got into the boil, everything was a little bit more straightforward, although I seem to have just managed to make a complete mess of everything today. You'll probably see in the videos there's like wort splattered everywhere. Like whatever I touched today, it seemed to end up firing wort across the room and whatever. So it was one of those days where I just couldn't stop making a mess of everything. But I don't think it caused any disastrous mishaps with the beer itself. So yeah, once it got to the boil, that was all pretty straightforward. Standard hop drops and everything like that. The extra sugars in terms of the sugar and the honey that were added in, what I did with those was to pour off a little bit of wort into a jug and dissolve them beforehand, because there was quite a lot. So there was a kilo of sugar, kilo of honey going in, and I didn't want to just pour them straight into the kettle in case they kind of congealed on the base and got stuck and burnt onto that. So that seemed to work well, but again, more opportunity for me to splatter sticky gloop all over the bench. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a tidy up now, but we're into the FV. We've got pretty much bang on volume, pretty much bang on with the original gravity, which came out at 1008, I think, in the end. So on the instructions it says somewhere between 110 and 111. So that's pretty much where I wanted to be. And now we just need to prepare some of the other stuff for the later additions. So we need to get the nibs and vanilla into some vodka and let those steep. And then once the fermentation has kicked off in a few days, the blueberry will be going in. As you can see, I've put a blow-off tube onto the FV because it does specifically say in the instructions to do that, and I've had a few other people warn me about the potential for impy stouts to go a bit mad with the fermentation and start, if I had the spunning valve on there, blast through the spunning valve and probably bugger that up as well. So I want to avoid destroying any equipment with an angry impy fermentation. So we've got the blow-off tube on there, which is pretty easy to set up just with the usual the cap that they give for the normal airlock for the all-rounder. So yeah, that's where we're at now. Probably that's it for now, and then we'll be back with the later additions. We've got coconut, blueberry, I think blueberry first, then the coconut, and then we've got the nibs and vanilla. Yeah, still quite a bit to do. So we're 24 hours in, the beer is fermenting away nicely in the fridge next to me. It hasn't exploded out the FV yet, which I'm very pleased about. And we've got that running at 18 degrees C currently as per the instructions. So next job is to prepare some of the extra flavour additions in a tincture made with some vodka. You have to supply a little bit of extra vodka on top of the kit itself in order to do that. But you only need a small bottle's worth, so it's not too big a deal. And into that, we're going to be putting our cacao nibs and our vanilla pods. So we've got about half a kilo of the cacao nibs, and I think there's about 8 to 10 of these vanilla pods, which smell fantastic even through the plastic vacuum pack. I'm going to do one extra trick with the cacao nibs, which is just to toast them off in the oven. That's not in the instructions, but that's a great little tip that I got from Brett at Brewing, which just really helps to release all the aromatics from the cacao and give it a really nice, intense chocolate flavour. So yeah, I'm going to put those into the vodka to steep and then leave that until towards the end of fermentation, when that's going to be added into the mix. It is day 3 and it's time to be getting the blueberry involved. So we've got 2 pouches of this which are going into the fermenter now. You can probably hear it thumping away in the background, but the fermentation is progressing with vigour right now. And these are going to add some more simple sugars into the mix. So I think between the 2 pouches, that's about an extra 350 grams of sugar, which is going to feed that fermentation and also obviously push that or nudge that ABV up a little bit higher still. Not that it wasn't going to be high enough anyway. So let's get it in. So we're 9 days in now and the beer does seem to have settled down at final gravity. It's attenuated out quite low. Maybe the mash temperature issues have contributed to that a little bit, but it is looking like it's going to be pretty pokey as far as the ABV goes. It's time for the coconut to go in, and I've taken some advice on this and decided to split it up into 4 muslin bags to add into a second fermenter, the other all-rounder that I've got, so that I can then transfer the beer onto that after purging the fermentation vessel a little bit with some CO2. Those bags are going to help avoid any issues as far as the coconut kind of clogging things up when it comes to filtering the beer off for transfer and getting it onto the next stage. That stage in another 10 days or so will be to transfer the beer off of the coconut and add in the cacao nibs, the vanilla, and the oak stave, as well as the vodka that the cacao and the vanilla have been steeping in. Those ingredients are also going to be bagged up for the same reason that I've done the coconut, just to avoid any issues as far as being able to separate it easily from the beer itself when it comes to finally transferring it into the keg to condition. And that should be in there for at least 2 weeks according to the instructions, but I'm going to basically monitor the flavour impact from it and see how we get on. The bag shouldn't make any difference really as far as flavour transfer, so we should get plenty of flavour out of it with the amount of nibs and the amount of vanilla that's in there, along with the oak stave. So yeah, that's it for now. So that's a wrap for the brewing process on the Bounty Hunter. It's into the keg now. We're 5 weeks since the original brew day, so it's been one hell of a process and journey with this one, getting this beer all finished off with all the different additions and adjuncts that have gone into it. But it's been a really fun and interesting beer to do. I never would have come up with something this complex and crazy, basically, off of my own back. So it's been yeah, really interesting experience. I've learned a lot from doing this, and I'm really excited to see what this beer is like when it's had a bit of time to condition and mellow out a little bit. I've obviously had a few samples of it already just to check how it's been going, and I will say that it's looking pretty good. And I've actually got a little bit in the glass here just to show you what it's looking like. So yeah, it looks the business, but I'm not going to give you any tasting notes on this yet. You're going to have to wait a little while. So I think probably in a month or two maybe, we'll see how it's going and we'll come back with some tasting notes. But get on to the Brew Day website and go and check out this kit. It is now available in a half-size version as well. So if you're a bit reluctant based on the price of the full-size batch, then you can get a smaller batch size and get involved with making the craziest all-grain beer kit that's out there at the moment, I think. So yeah, there we go. Any questions, get into the comments and let me know what you think about this beer and all the processes that have gone into making this one. Cheers, see you soon.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness or duder or, you know, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.